Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Dinosaur State Park. This is such an amazing assemblage of people as I look out over this room. Everyone's in the same room, and I just think it's so exciting. We've got elected officials, we've got members of friends groups here, we've got staff and former staff from the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. We've got our corporate sponsors, we've got some environmental groups represented here. We have the Young family, who I want to point out. They're here representing our No Child Left Inside program. They've come to, I think, every single one of our events. They're a wonderful family. And we're delighted to see them here. They really represent the best of our No Child Left Inside program. And last but certainly not least, we even have Mr. and Mrs. William Gillette here. I'm not sure where they are, but they came up from the castle to celebrate with us today. So I think Dinosaur State Park really represents among the best of what our state parks can offer. It's a historic site, it's an education center, it has trails, it has gardens and plantings, which you may not know. The plantings out in front of the building represent the plants that were alive at the time of the dinosaurs. So it's a pretty amazing place to visit, and we're so proud to have it as part of our park system here in Connecticut. And we're fortunate to have a magnificent array of parks, forests, beaches, mountains, trails that all contribute to the quality of life for our citizens and visitors. And they provide countless opportunities for recreation, appreciating history, viewing wildlife, or just getting out in nature. Thanks to a group of visionary leaders 100 years ago, we now have 250,000 acres of public land in this small state. Our Centennial theme of explore, discover, and celebrate is our effort to increase the awareness and appreciation of this remarkable park system. Today we're here to kick off a year of events and activities for everyone to enjoy. And speaking of visionary leaders, it's my great honor to introduce our first speaker. Oops, I got the order wrong, didn't I? Did I get the order wrong? Yep, I got the order wrong. Sorry, folks. He's also a visionary leader, actually. Lots of visionary leaders here. Everyone's a visionary leader. So we in the state park system rely on many strong partnerships to be successful. And our host communities are particularly important partnerships as we work to ensure that the parks provide both quality of life for the citizens and economic opportunities for the small businesses in the various cities and towns. Rocky Hill's focus on recreation and historic preservation fits perfectly with DEEP's mission. And I'd like to introduce the mayor of Rocky Hill, Mr. Timothy Moriarty. He tells me he is a lifelong native of Dinosaur State Park, but he tells me that none of the tracks in the trackway are his. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Moriarty to come up and say a few words for us.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Whalen. When I was contacted to speak here today, I was very honored. As she said, I'm a lifelong resident of Rocky Hill. I actually grew up right down the end of West Street here, and back in '66 when they did hit these tracks, we did make our trip up here on our bikes a couple nights and snuck in and looked at them when nobody's around, so I will admit to that. But we were fortunate to have Dinosaur State Park in Rocky Hill, not only for the residents of Connecticut and our town, but to bring people in from other parts of the country. Because along with that, they can stop and have a meal here or stay at the hotels, and we're fortunate enough too in Rocky Hill to have the oldest continuous running ferry from 1677. So we're very proud of that also, and we're working on a plan right now to have a rail trail or somewhat from our great meadows down there by Quarry Park to go all the way down to the Cromwell line. We have about 4.5 miles of river property along the river that we want to open up to not only our own residents, but the state residents and other people. It's nice with technology, the stuff we can do nowadays, but we got to remember where we came from, with these parks and stuff. And the environment is so important, especially with all this global warming now. We were just reading in the paper that, they're saying in 80 years, the Hammonasset State Park may not be there. Hopefully it's true that everything you read on the internet isn't true, because that would be unfortunate. I know my parents spent a lot of time down there, Rocky Neck, and the other beaches along the coast here. And, it's everybody's job to keep this environment friendly to us and our children and future residents of this state. not only just for us, but also the wildlife and everything else that goes along with it. You know, we're very fortunate here in Rocky Hill to have, you know, some bald eagles now nesting down in our meadows, and hopefully they stay here. I mean, it's gorgeous. You go down to Essex during February there when they have the Eagle a festival down there and stuff, to see them come down and ride on a boat down there and watch them, you know, fish along the river. It's a beautiful sight to see the eagles. But I want to thank Lieutenant Governor Wyman for coming to Rocky Hill. She's always a big friend of Rocky Hill, and we always are happy to see her here. I want to thank Commissioner Esty for inviting me here, along with your Deputy Commissioner, Chairperson Adams from the Centennial Committee. I wish you a lot of luck on your year-long endeavor here with the parks. And I know that, you know, the people really enjoy it, and I thank you for that, along with the Executive Director Hammerling and the Connecticut Forestry and Park Association. And with that, like I say, thank you very much for coming to Rocky Hill. Come back and bring friends. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moriarty. So back to visionary leaders. Our next speaker is a woman who has more than 30 years of public service. She's made an incredible contribution to the quality of life in Connecticut, whether you're talking about her role as comptroller, more recently lieutenant governor, or member of the House of Representatives. Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman was elected in 2010 to serve with Governor Dana Malloy, and they've been true partners in serving the citizens of Connecticut. Their support for the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection and state parks in particular has been unwavering, and we are extremely grateful for that support. Lieutenant Governor Wyman, it's my honor to welcome you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you, Susan, and it's great to be here. This is a great group here. You know, there are some seats here, I promise, even in the front, you can sit down. It feels like we're in church or school, you know, everybody goes to the back and never comes forward. But it is great to be here today. And, you know, I have to start off a little bit different about, on the way here today, I just spoke to Nikki O'Neill, one of the former governor's wife, and she said, "You're going where?" And I said, "I'm going to Dinosaur Park." And she said, "You know, in the governor's mansion, there used to be a dinosaur print." And I said, "I knew that, Nikki." And she said, "How do you know it?" I said, "It's in the lieutenant governor's office now." So all of you that visit the park, now come and visit my office so that you can see it. That's the young family, I expect, up in my office. No, it really is good. You know, when people talk about a great quality of life that we have here in Connecticut, really, there is no doubt that it's our state parks and that pay a major part of that kind of an experience. You know, because of these parks are not only enjoyed by those who live here, we draw a major group of tourists to our parks, which means an awful lot for our economy, almost $1 billion for it. And that's a big thing for us in our economy. Although we are doing everything we can today to preserve and promote them, the real credit has to go to the foresight of Connecticut's leaders in the early days of the 20th century. Now, I must admit, I was not in Connecticut then. Or anyplace else. It was their vision and their work a century ago that led to this incredible state park system that provides so much for all of us today. I don't know how many of you know this, but I find this amazing, that there is a state park within 15 minutes of in every home in the state of Connecticut. That's fantastic, you know? So, see, something new, a bit of history. If it's wrong, don't correct me. So, you know, so if you think about it, if you want to hike, swim, boat, or fish, these activities are everywhere. If you want to horseback ride, scuba dive, explore a castle, ski, or hop on a steam train, there we go, the steam train was, yeah, that's right, I had to say that. You can do it right here in Connecticut. And you can walk through our rich history at parks like the Putnam Memorial or Fort Trumbull or Fort Griswold. And I'm going to mention it again, is seeing the dinosaur footprints right here in Rocky Hill. You know, we all have seen dinosaurs on cartoons and, movies, but he is the real thing. And to excite people to do that, people think that's a long time ago. I think this is exciting. Our parks also help preserve the habitat for plants and animals and preserve green space for everyone. We try to do it with our farms, but doing it this way brings enjoyment to so many people. All these things add up to a legacy and a future, and that we can all be proud of, and that certainly deserves to be celebrated. So the governor, on the governor's behalf, I want to tell you that we are going to keep fighting to making sure that our parks are in the best shapes, that our parks are available to everyone. And he is truly sorry that he cannot be here today. But if I can, I want to thank, first of all, Susan and, of course, our great Commissioner Esty for doing this. I think this is a great idea. This is the kickoff. I want everybody to come to visit our parks. If you can visit at least 2 parks every summer, that would be great. Bring your family, friends, and bring people from out of state, because we don't. But at this time, I'd like to present to the Commissioner the official citation from the governor of the state of Connecticut, basically saying that he announces that to be hereby proclaimed that August 1st, 2013, as Connecticut State Parks Day in the state of Connecticut, signed by Daniel P. Malloy. This is for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming out. And Susan, I'm turning it back over to you. Thank you. Who is a visionary?
Well, it is true. We have no shortage of visionaries here. The next person I want to introduce is the Commissioner of the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. He was hired several years ago to manage a newly merged Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, and I'm sure most of you who see him in news coverage, he's talking about energy issues, which are incredibly important to this state and its citizens. But I have to tell you that more often than not, he is active, he's engaged, you can find him biking, hiking, fishing, any opportunity he has to get out of the office. You're not listening, right, Lieutenant Governor? Any chance he's got to get out of the office and do any of those outdoor pursuits. Recently, he biked in one day from New Haven to Suffield, Connecticut, which I would be exhausted, but he did it in one day with a group of friends and had a great time. He's a tremendous advocate for our park system, and he's inspired all of us at the DEEP to work harder, reach farther, and to be successful. So we're grateful to have him as our commissioner and enjoy his energy and enthusiasm for our parks. So, Commissioner Esty.
Susan, thank you very much, and thank you all for coming out for what is a beautiful day. It truly is a beautiful day because we are kicking off a year-long celebration of one of the most remarkable assets in the state of Connecticut. 107 state parks, not to mention 32 state forests, and 100 and some odd boat launches, an extraordinary resource when it comes to outdoor recreation of all kinds. And the Deputy Commissioner is correct. Some of my most wonderful days as Commissioner of this fabulous department have been out on the Housatonic River, canoeing, in the Farmington River, fly fishing, biking from New Haven all the way to Massachusetts, which we did just a few weeks ago, celebrating an extraordinary commitment in this state to remaking our infrastructure turning rail lines into linear parks and bikeways. And it is an amazing set of experiences that are possible in these parks. Putnam State Park in the southwest corner, a Revolutionary War site where the troops overwintered. Again, an amazing place. Fort Trumbull, down on the coast, where I spent, again, a fabulous day watching the tall ships come through. And there are an endless number of beautiful parks, beautiful sites, and wonderful opportunities for everyone, whether they want to bike or hike or walk or simply picnic. So I will encourage you. I just calculated that I'm 54 years old. If I followed the Lieutenant Governor's prescription of 2 parks per year, I would have just finished this year, the 107. I am still short, but I'm working on it, and encourage you all to not only match that 2 park a year pace, but come see the whole diversity of parks. It's an extraordinary resource. Well, we wouldn't get here today if it weren't for a wonderful set of partnerships that are critical to our state park system and to the department I lead. So it is a special privilege to follow Lieutenant Governor Nancy Wyman, who has been a staunch supporter of this department, and of course a great partner to Governor Malloy, who has, through a tough budget time, been willing to commit substantial capital investments into this park system at an unparalleled pace. So for those who haven't seen it, there's a wonderful environmental education classroom just across the entranceway in this building, and we have seen the same kind of commitment to upgrading the facilities all across the state. For those who haven't been there recently, Meeks Point Nature Center is going to be remade at Hammonasset, and there are new exhibits, new facilities, new buildings going up all over the state park system. So this is the kind of thing that doesn't get a lot of media attention, doesn't get noticed, but I want to tell you I am grateful for the leadership of this governor and this lieutenant governor in that kind of quiet but important way. And it really does make a difference, and I am thrilled to report on it today. Second, I want to tell you it doesn't happen only from the executive branch side. We have great partners in the legislative branch. And I'm sorry, but Representative Linda Gentile, who was here earlier, had to go. I would have wanted you to hear me salute her as the chair of our Environment Committee and as a wonderful partner to this department in getting done all of the things we need to do. And she has really stepped into that role with great vigor and enthusiasm and enormous interest in the parks and so much more in the way of land conservation. We have as well May Flexer. May, thank you for coming. Senator Joe Crisco, Senator James or Representative James Alvis. I've already given him a promotion.
That's a demotion.
I'm glad Senator Crisco didn't hear that. But James has been, again, a special partner to us in his role, and I have this right, as chair of the Coastal Task Force, because so many of our issues do relate to that coastline, which has become a challenge in the face of storms and other issues. So it is a real special privilege to have had a chance to work with the legislature, and particularly the special friends who are here today. Senator Crisco has been out with me on my Commissioner in Your Corner trips more than any other member of the General Assembly, including a terribly rainy day that we went out on the Mattabesset River. But he is, again, a staunch supporter not only of the department in general, but of my attempt to go out and celebrate park by park, resource by resource, this wonderful set of opportunities. And we don't turn back for rain, not under my administration. It is the case that, as someone said to me earlier, a rainy day is an opportunity because it's still a fabulous day to fish or to go to Dinosaur State Park on the inside. So there are resources every day somewhere, and I hope you will take advantage of them. Pam Adams is going to step up in a minute. Thank you for your chairing of the Centennial Committee. What an extraordinary job you've done. And Mayor Moriarty, thank you. And on behalf of all first selectmen, mayors, town council chairmen, town managers, we couldn't do what we do in the state system without fabulous partnerships with local officials, particularly the chief executives of the cities and towns. This is a state, as all of you know, not of counties, but of 169 cities and towns who each take great pride in their individual roles and leadership. And so it is a critical line of relationship. Eileen Grant, thank you for your role as president of the Friends of Connecticut State Parks. For those who don't know, one of the most treasured connections of our department is with the Friends of State Parks that now operate in more than 20 of our parks. And these Friends groups are able to support us in a variety of ways, providing docents, support for visitor centers, sometimes even financial resources for things that the state budget doesn't allow space for. So Eileen, on behalf of all the Friends groups, thank you for what you've done and for what all the Friends groups do. Eric Hammerling, sitting right next to Eileen, thank you as well. You've done an extraordinary job as Executive Director of Connecticut Forest and Park Association. And again, what you do and what your members do in clearing trails and helping us keep these parks in the condition they're in and really making sure that the full resources available to the public, we wouldn't be here without you. So thank you so very much. And at risk of going on, I am going to, because this is an extraordinary partnership, and this is the start of a year-long celebration, and I do want to honor many who've contributed. So People's United Bank, Bob Demore and a team that's here today, thank you for your leading sponsorship of our Centennial year. For those who haven't seen it, we have these beautiful banners at the entrance of all of our parks, and People's has done that, so thank you very much. And we've got other sponsors who are here. Eric Seacrest from Conestoga Log Cabins has done the fabulous calendars that you've got with beautiful pictures of the parks out over the years. We've got Bob Bell of the Valley Railway, and if you haven't been on that rail trip, you really need to do it. Children, grandchildren, young and old, it's a wonderful trip. And Everett Manning of the Active Network, thank you as well. It's really been a great collection of sponsors that have come together. And I would be remiss if I didn't stop and pause just to thank those in the department on our park staff, beginning with Deputy Commissioner Susan Whalen, but Tom Tyler, who's head of our park system, Diane Joy, who is our Assistant Director of State Parks. Diane, where did you go? All right, no hiding. Meg Enkler, who's the supervisor of this park. And Meg, let me honor you, and in honoring you, honor all the supervisors of our state parks. These folks take on huge responsibilities and resources that are stretched very thin, so it's an extraordinary job that they do. And frankly, beyond that, there are maintainers and other support in every one of these parks who make it possible for the experience that you all have day to day. And Al Levere, our park historian, a special thanks to you as well for what you've done to help this Centennial come alive. It really is spectacular, and we're grateful for it. So I want to just quickly say that we do kick off today a year-long celebration. September of 1913, a state park commission was formed with the express purpose of creating a state park system. Of course, this was coming close on the heels of the launch of the national park system by President Teddy Roosevelt, and a recognition by many that a conservation agenda is an important agenda for public officials and for governments. And the 6 commissioners that were launched at that time did focus on acquiring land, but they did so in a way that was carefully thought through, structured, and planned. In fact, they took on board a young Yale graduate and civil engineer named Albert Turner. He was the first employee of our state park system. And they sent him out to survey the options across the state. And in fact, he spent 7 months traversing the entire coastline, and beyond that, the inland resources. He surveyed and made note of 50 different lakes he thought might be worth bringing into the system in one way or another. He climbed dozens of mountains all across the state to look down on the resources. He assessed the rivers, the streams, and began to plot out options and opportunities. And that assessment was a pretty remarkable one, especially for one guy. So with all the talk about summer jobs, I'm grateful for the work that our summer people have done all across the years and across the state of Connecticut. The seasonal workers of this department are a huge additional resource, and one that also deserves to be celebrated. Now, I want to say that Mr. Turner didn't only look at the best of what we had to offer, but he actually worked to think through what was accessible to people and to understand that we do need parks everywhere. So the Lieutenant Governor's fun fact is not an accident. It was a design element. where we wanted to make sure everyone had resources near at hand. And it's impossible for us to imagine living today in a world of relatively clean air and safe drinking water, what it meant 100 years ago to have a park nearby. This is not to be taken for granted, that there was a place you could breathe deeply and enjoy fresh air. So having those parks nearby, within 15 minutes of every home in the state, is a design element for which we have that park commission to thank and Mr. Albert Turner. So this is a state that has grown very rapidly over 100 years. We do have a high population density. We do have sprawl and stress on our cities and towns, but we have an extraordinary set of parks to be grateful for. Beginning with Sherwood Island as the first park that land was purchased for. Now, it did take them 17 years to get it open as a park, but Governor Malloy would not allow that much time to pass, I assure you. The Malloy administration moves at much higher rate of speed, and we continue to build out these resources in a way that I'm proud of. Hammonasset, our largest park, most visited park, maxed out over the 4th of July. And in fact, on the 4th of July, you'll recall it was a hot day, we had the largest number of people visit our state park system of any day in 100 years. So this is not a park system that began in 1913 and kind of has withered away. It is a vibrant, living, changing, evolving, and growing resource. And I am again grateful to everyone in this room who plays a role in keeping that set of resources moving forward and really accessible to so many. So again, 107 state parks, 32 state forests, 121 boat launches, 8 million visitors a year to those parks. So it really is a remarkable set of assets to the state with, as I think the Lieutenant Governor mentioned, $1 billion of recreational economic value coming out of those parks, the fishing, the walking, the biking, the camping, and all the support services around those activities. For those who are interested, we launch shortly a summer outdoor journey or sojourn that's going to be led by Diane Joy, who's still hiding from me around the corner. Diane, step out so people can sign up with you. This sojourn is a chance to do a 169-mile trek across the state, visiting 20 different state parks. It is going to launch shortly and conclude 10 days later at Sherwood Island State Park with a huge celebration. So come walk for the whole thing for a day, or just come to the celebration at the end. That'd be fine too. Over the course of the next year, we'll be having a series of birthday parties, particularly next summer. We hope you will come to those. They're going to be free refreshments and a chance to see parks that you might not have seen. And for those who are interested, a chance to step up and volunteer, because again, it is so important to us that we have the support of our friends groups. And as Pam maybe is going to tell you more about, we're going to conclude with an extraordinary closing program called Sky's the Limit. So I'm going to let her tell you about that. The Centennial year will be a year of history, a year of showcasing our resources, of celebrating outdoor recreation. And it is a special joy not to be the Commissioner of Energy today, not to be the Commissioner of the Environment, but to be the Commissioner of Outdoor Recreation. And it really is critical in a world where we're all too sedentary that we find ways to get all of our friends, our neighbors, our families out and about. We do have our special No Child Left Inside program that really encourages the young folks to get out and lead the way. So I want to close by saying, come be part of what will be a wonderful year of celebration under the theme of explore, discover, and celebrate. And there really is a lot of magic in these parks to do that with. So thank you all for being here. A special thanks to all the partners who are part of the program.
So I have to say, when the commissioner started talking about a Yale graduate who was out scaling mountains and traversing fields and paddling up and down streams and coming back with lots of ideas, I couldn't help but think of another Yale graduate who does something very similar, and that's Commissioner Esty. So he's got that same enthusiasm that Albert Turner had. As the commissioner said, Pam Adams has been the chairman of our Centennial Committee, which has been working tirelessly behind the scenes for the past year to plan and execute all the events and activities that we'll be celebrating. The committee consists of past and present park staff. Pam was our former state parks director, and she's brought tremendous energy to the job. The Division of Tourism helped with our logo, and all the activities and the work that's been done has helped to make this an exciting year. I want to really thank Pam in particular. We wouldn't be standing here today without her prodding us along and without her enthusiasm. So Pam, if you want to come up and say a few words.
I'm not really one of those visionaries. I'm more of an in the trenches, schlag it out kind of person. Before I get into what I'm going to say, I do want to acknowledge the children that are here today. Katie, Jeremy, Drew, and Becky Young, and Mateo is here, and Solomon in here. And I know that there are other children here that, and I'm sorry if I didn't have your names, but not only are we celebrating a century of state parks, but we're also going to be moving the state parks into the future. And it is going to be in the hands of these young folks to bring the parks along, to nurture them, and to pass along the enthusiasm of their youth onto their friends, and when they get to be a little bit older, onto their children. So I would like to thank all of you who go to the parks with your parents, and I think that the Connecticut State Parks have a very bright future if they're an indication of the kinds of folks that are going to be taking care of our parks. So thank you all for going to the parks. Okay, well, it's so wonderful to see such a wide variety of Connecticut State Park supporters here today to wish Connecticut's awesome state park system a very happy 100th birthday, and to welcome us into a prosperous future into the next century. I have to say that Connecticut's parks are looking pretty good at 100 years of age. And I would venture that Albert Turner and the original park commissioners would be very pleased to see how their baby has grown and matured over this past century. These parks not only have protected more than 6 miles of Connecticut's coast and thousands of acres of valuable natural resources and prehistoric resources, but also preserved Connecticut's very essence through parks representing the state's industrial, cultural, philanthropic, military, and technological history. Yes, I believe the park commissioners would be nodding their heads in approval and smiling on us today. Those of you here, along with many that have gone before, should take pride in your hard work and perseverance in the pursuit of excellence in building and maintaining our state parks. This was not an achievement accomplished by park staff alone. Great successes are not accomplished by one person, but by clear vision, achievable goals, strong teamwork, and supportive partners. Connecticut State Parks are a proud example of what teamwork and partnerships can accomplish. Innovative and resourceful folks from the public and private sector, corporate and private not-for-profits, paid and volunteer, young and old, have built this park system by stepping up to implement change, support programs, acquire land, preserve history, all in the name of the public good and in accordance with the Connecticut State Park Commission and their vision. So it is with this Connecticut State Park Centennial celebration. The economic downturn and challenging budgets have placed the State Parks Division in a position of directing their limited resources to essential spending only. And certainly the Centennial Committee did not want to do anything that would take away from the programs and the services that are provided to the public through the state parks, and certainly not to expend valuable resource money on things like a birthday party. But I think we can all agree that the Centennial, this very special 100th anniversary of our amazing state park system, simply had to be recognized. To that end, the Centennial Committee reached out to those who have dedicated their time and service to shape the park system and played a role in guiding its development and programming. Once again, the park's partners have come forth with their enthusiasm and generosity to support the park system by funding this year's Centennial events. And I am pleased to tell you that All of the events that are going to be held this year are funded completely by private donations. Not a cent of state money is spent here. Therefore, it is with great appreciation and gratitude on behalf of the Centennial Committee, the State Parks Division, and a devoted public that I acknowledge the following companies and organizations for their generosity. And as I talk about you, would representatives from these companies please come up to the front? Okay. All right. The first grouping is the construction and engineering firm sponsors. These folks really have helped build the state parks in recent years, and some from the ground up. BL Companies Incorporated, is Ray Gradwell here? No. John J. Brennan, Manafort Brothers, Mattern Construction, and McGinley Calso, who is donating an exhibit to Fort Trumbull State Park. Our equipment sponsors, the John Deere Dealers of Connecticut, donated to Centennial through Stanton Power Equipment. They're a company that is a leader in providing quality park maintenance and equipment such as mowers, power tools, etc. And they gave a significant monetary donation. R.J. Thomas Pilot Rock from Cherokee, Iowa. They provide campsite amenities throughout Connecticut state parks. Cabela's of East Hartford, and they are providing tents, cots, and fire rings for those who come out to camp on the Sojourn, and their staff is also helping out with canoeing. Edward Bartolotta and Gary Perzan, are you here? Why don't you come on up? And remain stable. Okay, and why don't you stay up here so that we're going to gather everybody up in front here. So why don't you just stay? Yeah. The private non-profit sponsors who donated because of their love of the state parks. Friends of Connecticut State Parks, they made the donation to purchase the Centennial pins. Eileen, why don't you come on up? The women's, I know. The Women's Forum from Litchfield, and Women Walking from Petaluma, California. Food sponsors, Frank Andrews Mobile Kitchen LLC. They are providing food for the Centennial Sojourn at Chatfield Hollow. And our major sponsors, some of whom were mentioned before, People's United Bank from Bridgeport. They, as Commissioner Esty told you, donated the significant amount of money for the banners. And Robert Demore, Vince Santelli, and David Lewis, why don't you all come on up? Okay, Conestoga Log Cabins. They made the donation to print the Centennial calendars that I believe are available here today. And they are from Lebanon, Pennsylvania. And we have Eric Seacrest joining us today. Active Network, Saratoga Springs, New York. They brought Connecticut State Parks into the modern age by creating Connecticut's online camping reservation service, and they have funded 2 days of food and supplies for the Centennial Sojourn. And Everett Manning, come on up. Coca-Cola. They are donating vehicles and drivers to transport the participants in the Centennial Sojourn. They're going to drive their equipment from point A to point B for 5 days of the journey. And they are also supplying water and beverages for the participants. Harriet Tolvey and Mike Doyle? No? Okay, and in a group that I call State Park Sponsors, because they're kind of unique. They operate kind of separately, but in very close partnership with the state parks. Valley Railroad does operate its trains on a Connecticut state park, and they have been very generous in providing a monetary donation for the Centennial, as well as train and boat rides for the Sojourn, and they are catering the food and beverages for today's celebration. Bob Bell. Okay, and last but not least, the Beardsley Zoo, also at least a former Connecticut state park, but they are now adjacent to a state park. They are now a separate entity, and they are providing programming for the Sojourn, free access to the zoo for participants in the Sojourn, and accommodations to camp overnight. Wouldn't you like to camp overnight at a zoo? I don't know if I have any representatives here from Beardsley today? No. Okay, well, let's have another round of applause for all of our sponsors.
So who doesn't mind walking up the stage and getting back? So we can kind of be a bunch together, so I can get a picture?
Sure.
I could be up there.
You guys can stay. Somebody want to stay at the front.
Right, just a few in the back, but I don't, can we shut that? Well, we're gonna have like a, Aaron, you want me to turn the projector on? Yeah, that's what I was gonna have now. And you look good, Pam and Susan, I mean, Susan. You know, can I ask you to move to another seat? And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, well, while everybody's returning to their seats, I wasn't going to talk about some of the events for next year, but since Commissioner Esty suggested that I do that, I guess I will. Certainly this year we have the kickoff event today and the Sojourn, which starts on August 15th and will conclude on August 25th. And next year, we have a birthday party celebration that will be held probably in July. And that is we're going to have refreshments at a number of parks throughout the state. And not only is it just a day to celebrate and have a party, but it's also going to be a give back day where we're going to ask children and their families to come to a number of parks and do projects in the parks so that children can understand what it takes to maintain a park. And this will also teach them to be better stewards of the property. If they understand how difficult it is to maintain a park, then they will treat them far more gently in the future and hopefully convey that to their friends and other families as well. So that will be part of that celebration, and we are also planning to have a sandcastle sculpting contest at a number of facilities, and perhaps a professional sand sculptor as well. Again, it's something that we're going to need a little more funding for. And the final event will be something we call the Sky's the Limit, and it is going to be focusing on looking up and into the future. And it is going to consist of a number of events, including astronomy, bird watching, kite flying, hot air ballooning, model airplane flying, and anything else we can come up with. And that will conclude with a discussion about where the parks go into the future. So I think it's going to be a fun year. We'll get through this year and look into next year for the major events. But in addition to those events that the Centennial Committee is planning, we have 23 Friends organizations throughout the state, and every one of them is planning a special event in their facility. And I would encourage all of you to keep an eye out in the papers to see when they are, and drop in and visit these groups, because every one of them puts on a fabulous party, a fabulous function, and great events. And they do it very, very well. And they're all well attended, and we hope this year's events will be even more so. So we look forward to that for the rest of the Centennial year. And just sort of a little political advertisement here. Even though we've enjoyed the largesse of many generous sponsors, there's still a long way to go to acquire enough funding for next year's events. So I'm making a plea to all of you here today to please consider making a contribution to the Friends of Connecticut State Parks to help the 2014 birthday celebration events. And you can see me afterwards for information as to how to do this, or you may also go to the website at www.ct.gov/DEEP/stateparks100 to obtain information about where to send your contribution. So again, a heartfelt thank you to all of our generous sponsors, and a very happy 100th birthday to Connecticut State Parks. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pam. I would add that if you're interested in information about the Centennial, this logo that we've got here on our website is also a great place to click on to get information about the various Centennial activities. And I would also say the Friends accept cash, checks, Visa, MasterCard, Discover. Jewelry if it's really nice. Eileen likes jewelry. As the commissioner and Pam have said, we couldn't do it without our friends, and we don't just mean friends writ large. We mean our friends groups who are enormous contributors to our activities at state parks, whether it's doing docent work in museums or helping with gardening, helping us to purchase equipment. Any number of activities and programs they offer wouldn't be possible without the energy and enthusiasm that they supply. I also want to thank the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. They've been another tremendous advocate and support for us. We do a lot of fun activities together, No Child Left Inside, Trails Day, and things like that. And Eric Hammerling and his team have been really terrific to work with. So with that, I want to bring Eileen and Eric up. I think they want to say a few words, and then we'll conclude.
Hello, I'm Eileen Grant, president of the Friends of Connecticut State Parks. There are presently 23 groups in the Friends statewide coalition, with more likely to form in the near future. Overall membership is 6,900 people. All members are volunteers. Collectively, Friends groups donate over 79,000 volunteer hours annually. That translates to $2.2 million of labor per year. Those 79,000 hours are equivalent to the amount of hours worked by 41 full-time employees. As the park system has only 74 full-time field staff to maintain our facilities and service our 8 million patrons, Friends' labor contribution is pretty significant. In addition to labor, Friends, over our history, have donated about $8 million to supplement Parks' very small operating budgets, to host educational programming, and to underwrite capital projects and land purchases, amongst many, many other things. Friends have a 90-year history with the park system. Our first group, the Sleeping Giant Association, was established in 1924, but over 2/3 of our Friends groups formed after 1990 as grassroots responses to very perceptible declines in the condition of many state parks. Long before our present budget woes affected the entire spectrum of government-provided services, parks experienced a marked reduction in funds provided for operations, especially with regard to personnel levels. This diminished level of funding has dogged the park system for 25 or 30 years. Friends do their best daily in parks to help mitigate shortfalls and to enhance visitors' experiences, for we know how important our conservation properties are to everyone, particularly those who can't necessarily afford an expensive vacation or science camp for their kids. Providing safe, attractive places for our senior citizens to recreate and stay healthy is also a priority. The centennial year, I have no doubt, this centennial year, I have no doubt that citizens will flock to our parks to participate in every special activity offered, whether nature or science-based, sports-oriented, or focused upon Connecticut history. Friends over the decades have observed the overwhelming public thirst for educational programming, seen the always positive response to every new trail, boardwalk, bike path, campground, or picnic area, and witnessed the great community pride when a historic structure reflective of Connecticut's deep past is restored and reopened. There is nothing that happens in our parks that does not interest our citizens or that does not somehow enrich their lives. The Friends and CFPA are aided in our many initiatives by our great colleagues at DEEP. I can't think of any other agency in government that enjoys such a long, close, and fruitful relationship with private sector partners. I think the productive association amongst DEEP, the Friends, and CFPA is really quite unique. Not that we don't disagree on occasion about how to approach problems, but we are always on the same page about the mission to which we are dedicated and the heritage we seek to protect. You get to know people pretty well after 90 years together, and I would say that the Friends' respect, admiration, and affection for our partners seems only to grow with time. We will certainly remain committed to work together to preserve our green spaces. This centennial year will be about many things. We will celebrate the wonder of the historic, cultural, and natural resources that we are all so privileged to share. We will honor the hard, selfless work of our foresighted forebearers. We will highlight the critical work now being accomplished and the benefits provided to citizens by a broad spectrum of parties, both public and private. Most importantly, we will speak about the pressing need to take some thoughtful steps which will help ensure that our unparalleled parks and forest system will be intact and flourishing 100 years from now at our next grand birthday party. Thank you.
Good afternoon, and just in case anyone misheard that, it's intact and flourishing, not attacked and flourishing. But I'm the executive director of the Connecticut Forest and Park Association. It's just so wonderful to be here for this great celebration. It's also great to know how many visionaries we have in this room, because really I'm going to talk today about vision. And I'm going to talk actually about something that started 118 years ago, and I realize this is self-serving, but in 1895, the Connecticut Forest and Park Association became the first nonprofit conservation organization established in Connecticut. And a central focus of our mission 118 years ago was the establishment, protection, and management of state parks, state forests, and now that also includes over 825 miles of blue-blazed hiking trails for the benefit of the public. But that was then, and this is now. And today I want to talk about vision for the future. My predecessors at CFPA, like Albert Turner, were people of vision who both advocated for and committed significant funding to establish state parks, special places like Sherwood Island, Rocky Neck, Talcott Mountain, Sleeping Giant, Osbornedale, and many others would not have become public resources that are valued by all of us without the involvement of CFPA and many, many partners. I'm always amazed, though, looking back over time, by some of the stories in our archives about how CFPA and partners had to convince past governors to accept responsibility for Connecticut icons such as Gillette Castle or Harkness Memorial. You would think today that that would have been a no-brainer, but it was not. I could talk about lots of such stories over the past 100 years about advocates and public-spirited philanthropists and state leaders who helped make the state park system what it is today. Tom Tyler and Al Levere could certainly tell many more of these stories. However, I'd rather look forward to the future and emphasize our ongoing need for vision. I say this not because I do not have great respect for our commissioner,
for the Deputy Commissioner, for the Director of State Parks, who are all visionaries in their own right. But I do believe that because of the lack of resources that Eileen referenced, we are getting dangerously close to losing our vision of an optimistic future for this state park system. A future in the parks for my son Mateo and those that follow him. Because quite frankly, the diminishing workforce for the state parks and forests over the past decade has taken its toll. And this can't continue. We need to do better. Though I do also need to acknowledge that there have been, under this administration, some really good investments on the capital side of the budget, on improvements in the parks. There's been bonding for the Community Investment Act, open space, farmland, things that many of us really value. But those 74 heroic field staff who are struggling mightily to simply keep their heads above water amidst great public demand and pressure in 107 state parks, it is really, it's difficult to see. When you're struggling for survival, it's hard to develop a grand vision for the future. We need to find a way to turn this tide and find creative ways to invest in the future of our parks. If we want to embody our state's marketing slogan, "Still Revolutionary," we must do this. And I feel a lot of wonderful energy in this room. I know many of you will be a part of that solution. But before trying to get you charged up and ready for some food, I do want to just finish by recognizing the outstanding advocacy and organizational efforts of Eileen Grant and Pam Adams, who are not paid to do what they do for the park system. They are dedicated volunteers who do what they do out of love and a sense of taking personal responsibility for our state's public treasures. If you do not do so already, please support the Friends of Connecticut State Parks and CFPA as well. As members, volunteers, advocates, as we try to rally support for Connecticut's great park system and work towards keeping the vision of our future state parks alive. We know there are many, many people who support state parks whose voices are not being heard in Hartford. Perhaps one of those voices belongs to you. I do have to make a quick announcement, and that is Joseph Leary, who's the author of A Shared Landscape, a wonderful book about our state parks, is here today and is willing to sign copies of the book that are available near the food. I can't describe it any better than that. But thank you so much, and look forward to working with all of you on our great state parks.
Thank you very much. Well, it's time to start the birthday party. Thank you all very much for coming on behalf of the Commissioner and the Governor and Lieutenant Governor. We're so pleased you could join us today. We hope to see you at our parks in the days and weeks ahead, and we hope to see you out at the refreshment table, which is just around the corner. And before you leave, make sure that you take a Centennial calendar with you. Our own Al Levere and the Centennial Committee worked very hard on a fantastic calendar that contains some of the historic images you see around here, along with modern photographs. As Pam mentioned, it was funded by Conestoga Cabins, and the refreshments have been funded by Bob Bell from the Essex Valley Railroad. So we thank both of you for your support today. And with that, happy birthday, everybody. Let's go.